Brotherhood podcast. I'm taking over for the one and only Caleb Foster today. Very excited to welcome the newest addition to our coaching staff, Coach Evan Brads. Evan, welcome. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I think today what I would love to do is explain a little bit about Evan's background and how I got to know Evan when I knew he would be such an incredible addition to our coaching staff and where we are right now. And one of the things that I learned about Evan, he had a very unique way of getting into coaching. He's a great player, all-time leading scorer at Belmont, scored a lot of points in a lot of different ways. And as he pursued his professional career, he, I think, fell into coaching, in which I want him to definitely explain. But I know Evan's going to bring really a great NBA perspective, being in the NBA for this long. I know he's developed great relationships with players, and I felt the way that he views the game was really in line with myself, but also our program with where we are and where we're trying to go. So great to have Evan. And why don't you just start off by talking about how you got into coaching? Because when we were talking, I think that's a great story of how you got started into this at such a young age.
Yeah, like you said, I played at Belmont for 4 years, and I was probably one of those kids that thought I was going to play forever. Unfortunately, my body kind of gave up on me. I tore my ACL and my meniscus in a draft workout with the Pacers. Probably always knew I wasn't going to go to the NBA, wasn't quite good enough, but wanted to try, wanted to see what the experience would be like. And yeah, I tore my ACL about 15 minutes into the draft workout, pretty much ended my career there. So didn't have a whole lot going on. After that, I was rehabbing, my hometown in Ohio. And, luckily, one day out of the blue, I got a call from Brad Stevens talking to me about a G League opportunity. And I didn't know a whole lot about the G League at the time. It was in Maine. So, essentially, I packed my car up and drove all the way to Maine. And I worked there for 6 months for one season. And it was an incredible experience. I fell in love with coaching quickly. Just the day-to-day, the games are obviously amazing. But the day-to-day, the process about, all the game planning, the on-the-court stuff, I just fell in love with it. And then after that, I never really looked back. I never thought about playing again. Spent 5 total years in Boston before making the transition to Salt Lake City with the Jazz. And, I've been very fortunate, like we've talked about a little bit, just to work in some really cool places, but work with a lot of great people as well.
So before I do want to touch on some of your coaching experiences with the Celtics and the Jazz, I want to go back a little bit. A guy that we know very well long before he got here, that's Luke Canard.
Yep. And
you're from a basketball-centric area in Ohio to me, with what I know and what I've learned. Just talk about that. Who won you when you guys played in high school? You were Canard.
We always scrimmaged them. They were a bigger school than we were. I know you said on the phone, you thought that was a small school. My school was tiny. We always scrimmaged each other. And it was I'm going to say we won just because, I know Luke well enough to know he wouldn't respect me if I didn't say that. Yeah. But he was a little younger than I was. So I think I was a junior when he was a freshman. But I was very fortunate. His high school coach was really good to me. When I would come back in the summer times, they would do open gyms. I would get to go play with Luke. Thank God I wasn't on the other team, and that's when I saw. I was this is why Luke goes to Duke. There's a reason. So it was cool to see play against him as, I guess it was his freshman year, hear about him, kind of follow him, being from the same area, and to where he was at now. We talked about, every time I see him on the road, right. It's good to see him. Super happy for what he's done. He represents that area really, really well.
Well, you talk about, all right, playing in Ohio, go to Belmont, play for one of the great coaches, Coach Bird. And the thing that I've learned, in my experience of playing for Coach K, playing for Chris Finch in the G League, some of the great coaches you get a chance to be around. I was blessed a couple summers at USA Basketball, and Coach Pop is there, and Coach Tibbs, and Coach Williams, and some of these guys. you've been around great people too, right? And so Coach Bird, just what's his influence been on you? You know, obviously playing for him, but also I know you guys have a close relationship even to this day.
Yeah, I didn't realize like how big of an influence he had on me until like probably a couple years after. Being around the people that I was around in the NBA, I could tell they were like him in a lot of ways. Like I would describe Coach Bird as a really great coach, but an even better person, and that was something that was big for me from the beginning. Um, but you know, he's always been there for me. You know, he was the best coach I ever played for. Maybe even been around at like pushing the right buttons at the right time to get the best out of his players. I look back at some of the things like how he got me going, and I was like, that was perfect. And then just the overall preparation that he had on a game-to-game basis, I thought was, like looking back, was incredible. One step ahead at all times.
So you talk about Coach Bird. Favorite college memory? What was it? Favorite playing?
Yeah. Oh, this is easy. So we're playing the OVC championship against Murray State. This is campaign. Murray State, like sophomore year, they had won like 28 games in a row or something like that. Something must have happened at the end of the first half, and he walked in the locker room and said, if I didn't want to score the ball, I could come be an assistant coach for the rest of the game. And it, like I said, it pushed the right button. And I think to start the second half, I think I scored like 8 straight points to start the second half, and it was like, and we ended up winning that game. My roommate hit a huge shot at the end of the game, and we got to go to the NCAA tournament. And like a little thing like that, like looking back, I was like, he knew exactly what he was doing. Even though he would probably tell you he had no clue what he even said. He doesn't remember. So it's one of those things.
I think anybody that's played here could tell you a few Coach K stories, similar in different ways to that. And so I want to get to your experience in the NBA. The thing that I learned, though, getting ready for this podcast, is your family actually has some history in the NBA. Okay? So why don't you share, because me and you have never talked about this.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to butcher this. I want to make sure I'm close to right. My grandfather played at Ohio State. He played right after the John Havlicek, Jerry Lucas era. So I want to say it was like 61, 62, 63 in that area. He couldn't really score the ball. I think he was I think he was 2-time player of the year in the country. And then he was like the 3rd overall pick in whatever year draft that was by the Baltimore Bullets, I believe. Did a little bit of both the NBA and the ABA, I believe. Played with like Rick Barry. It's funny, he actually played with Ron Boone, who was a commentator for the Jazz, which was interesting to meet him out there for a while. Unfortunately, he passed when I'm trying to think when that was. My dad was probably 13 or 14, so I never got to meet him. But like growing up in that small town, like his name's on the gym, like it's Gary Braz Memorial Gym. His picture's up everywhere. You hear all the stories. You go to Ohio State, his number's in the rafters, with like Evan Turner, like those guys up there, Havlicek, Lucas. So yeah, I mean, I think he played probably, I'll butcher this, 7 years in between the ABA and the NBA, and then gave it up and moved back to where I'm from, Jamestown, Ohio.
It's a special thing, and that's something I didn't even know until, again, shout out Dave Bradley for giving me some good facts and background, and that's something that I learned. So the fact that it runs in the family. Yep,
father played at University of Dayton, so I guess I was kind of born into it a little bit.
No, it's not a little bit, a lot bit in that. And then part of this you go through for us is. I've been fortunate, as you know, where you're, I'm asking about different coaches that are out there, and somebody that I've grown close to and trust a lot is Will Hardy. And obviously you're really close to Will, and I remember having a conversation with Will about you. Obviously I know he's meant a lot to you with your development as a coach and what you guys have gone through together. He raved about you in a lot of different ways. maybe what was if you could share about the Jazz experience that you've had up until now, and particularly what you've learned from Will as a coach and your relationship with him.
Yeah, no, I think the relationship started in Boston. When he came from San Antonio that year, we got beat in the finals. We spent a lot of time together, on the court, in the office, that type of thing, and I'll forever be indebted to him. He gave me my first opportunity to be an assistant coach, and he let me run with it. Again, I'll be forever grateful for that, and just being around him every day. Seeing him interact with the players, how he was able to grow those relationships with the players and then coach those players and then hold them accountable in certain times is something that I really tried to pay attention to, and something I really respect him for, because it's hard. It's hard. At times where, in our case, it was 82 games. There's a lot going on. He had a great feel about when to do certain things with the players. And again, it was something I saw from a distance, and I got luckily was able to work really close with him, even in Utah, to, see how he did that. And then the end game stuff, he's extremely creative. He's not afraid to try new things. A little bit of outside the box thinker, which I really enjoyed being around, which has influenced me in a lot of ways. Which I'm sure you'll find out. You'll probably nix some of those ideas, but that's okay, But yeah, again, just be forever grateful for him.
Well, you brought up a few things I want to touch on. It's part of what led us being here right now with you being on staff. And I think it's important, I want whoever's listening, watching, whatever way this is being viewed right now, to understand alignment's really important in this. When you're a head coach and you have your staff, with your staff being in alignment in terms of the way you think the game, right? How we're going to play. That doesn't mean there's not going to be disagreements along the way or new ideas, you say, outside the box. I want a lot of that. That's what Seawald does for me all the time. That's what, Coach Stildy does all the time. And that's what I knew you would bring to the table. But why don't you just touch on maybe for those who, let's get behind the scenes a little bit in our conversations, just in thinking the game. And the game has changed so rapidly, right? And the NBA, where it is now, where part of college basketball is gone, not completely. And these were a lot of the conversations we talked about. The other thing I want to just touch on, for you, you've ran the player development program in Utah for a few years. You've been on the offensive team, and that's been the strength of what you've done, although you have a complete overview over everything that's happening on the court. Why don't we just touch on maybe the way you think the game and what you've learned with Brad Stevens, Ime Udoka, Will Hardy, and where the modern game is at, and which I really enjoyed in our conversations, and I think it would be great for you to share that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, those three guys you just mentioned, and then along with the assistant coaches, have really helped me. They really helped me learn the game, especially the NBA game. And I'm a huge believer that basketball is basketball at the end of the day. Whether it's college, whether it's the NBA, there's things that the game is a little different, but I think there's a lot of things that you can take from both, and I think we agree on that.
Right.
I think the hardest thing going through this process was when you asked me to poke holes in the offense. And I was like, okay, so I have to do this to a pretty historic offense. I was sweet.
Right.
Sweet. But I think the way that Duke played last year, especially, was something that was really enjoyable for me to watch. The way that you guys space the floor, the way that we space the floor, is something that I'm relatively used to. The actions that they run, we run. Sorry, I got to get used to this. I'm still working on it. I'm working on it. Yeah, it's my third day here.
We will run.
Yeah, we will. We do run.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's just so many similarities to where, the way your mind is going to where my mind goes as well. The alignment you speak about.
Let's just touch on the spacing for a second,
Yeah.
because I think it's important to understand, like where the game is going. If you watch an NBA game, or if you watch us play last year, right? It's opening up that paint.
Yeah.
Paint's the priority, but you're opening it up for different opportunities to drive, different opportunities to cut, and ultimately we're going to get there. You may not just start there.
Exactly.
Right, and that's something me and you have talked a lot about. We've really converted last season to what we did, and so I just want to mention that because I think it's important to understand that's part of why we had so much success last year.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like, you watch some of the best offenses, in the NBA. I'm gonna steal this line from Missoula. Spacing is offense and offense is spacing, and I actually really agree with that. If I drive to the paint and you're above the break and I'm looking to the corner and I throw it to the bench, that's just as much on you as it is on me, in my opinion. So with that, I have to trust that you're going to be there, and then you have to trust me that I'll make the right decision. And yeah, getting to space is the first key. How quickly we can get to our spacing, the faster the better, right? And then opening up that paint, opening up those driving lanes. I think if you ask the guys that I've coached in Utah, especially last year, you can ask Kyle. He probably got tired of me talking about spacing because it's an everyday thing that I don't think is something that we should be willing to let slip. There's no reason not to be where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And that doesn't just help you. That helps your teammates. And, like you said, it could help you lead to having a really, really good offense. But I think that's huge. And then I think a lot of the game is just simply finding a way to get an advantage, to create that advantage, and then keep and maintain that advantage. If the actions aren't just there just to be run, if you want to run a simple ball screen, let's do it at 27 on the shot clock instead of 12. Let's get to something, let's create that advantage, let's hold it, and then let's just find the best shot available, regardless of if it's 27 on the shot clock or if it's in the last 10 seconds. I'm a big believer in that. We could go on all day, but just, especially on the offensive end, the shot selection. I think, you watch some of the playoffs, you watch what the Celtics have done for the last 2 years. They take a lot of threes, but they also get a lot of layups. The Warriors of the past, Steph Curry revolutionized the game, but I can remember being in Boston with Coach Stevens, and one thing he always harped on was the threes suck, but so do the backdoor slips that the guys get, so do the fake handoffs that Draymond Green gets. The layups and the cuts really kill you. So it's the same thing for us moving forward. How can we get the best shots? And we can argue with anyone. Math says layups and dunks, threes, and free throws. Those are the best shots we can get.
It's something that me and you talked about many times as we were going through this process, but just about the math game.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you're touching on. And if you look at you touched on our team from this past year, and at some time I think it would be fascinating, if anybody is interested, to go through our offense, and some of the numbers behind it from this past season. But like you said, it was historically one of the best seasons ever on the offensive end. As much as anything, we had great spacing, we took great shots. And we had a term just of fighting for our shots. And our players did such a good job of being unselfish, not getting caught up in their individual numbers, but really passing up good ones for great ones. And, I think maybe it's for another day. We can get into the weeds of it. But overall, when we talk about the math game, we want to touch on that a little bit when we've talked about that.
It's nobody likes to hear that. It's especially the way the game's changing. You're seeing arguments about they're shooting too many threes in the NBA, whatever.
Right.
Okay, but if your team takes, I don't know, let's say 20 threes, and you make 6, or you make 7, whatever it is, and my team takes 50 threes, and we make 15, some days it just depends on the team. it's going to be really hard for you because assuming where are those other shots coming from? They all can't be layups, probably. You're taking those tough contested twos. The math just simply doesn't work out a lot. You always have your one-offs, like your outliers, but
Sure.
I just think it's hard, especially from that math perspective to, uh, not shoot a decent enough threes and kind of play that modern style. I think it's awesome to watch. You you do miss you miss the elbow ISO post isolations. Trust me, I get it. Um, we played open gym. I can't shoot. So I
It's
understand.
ironic you want to play the way that you don't play at all. That's the
I
ironic
know.
part.
That's why I'm sitting here.
I want to make sure we can talk about briefly. Player development is such an important thing, right? And the way that me and you train growing up, things a lot different than how we try to train and develop our players.
Yeah.
And it's not as much anymore about. There's only so much you can do in a one-on-one workout
Yeah.
or with no contact. And something that I know we've talked about, and really the NBA has done an amazing job for a long time. I think our program has really adapted to this, in the last how many ever years, going back to when Coach K was the head coach of modernizing our program. But for us, we want to be as close as possible to that. And why don't you just touch on the way of scripting real game situations for guys and your philosophy with that, and some of what you've done with the Jazz,
Yeah.
and then what we're going to continue to do here.
Yeah, I think the overall philosophy is like what's kind of what you said. Like you're trying to make those situations as game-like as possible without them failing every single time, right?
Right.
You want to see them succeed in that. So that's, I'm trying to, just use a simple finish. You don't want them to just go through it by themselves every single time without getting bumped off their spot, without them getting contested at the rim at all. You're trying to make that as game-like as possible so that when they get in the game, they're like, I've seen this. I'm good. I know what I'm doing. And then that applies not only to, your individual game, but then how you fit in the concepts of the offense or the defense and how you want to play. So I think let's just say high pick and roll. Nobody wants to go through a 2-on-0 pick and roll where I tell this guy to, hey, come off here and just hit the roller. Okay, that's sweet. Like it's good for them to see that at the start, but then it's like, how can we make that more game like? So it's bodies. It's instead of 2-on-0, we start with a 2-on-1 off the playing versus the pick and roll coverage, the drop, for example. All right, you have to play with your roller. Do I finish? Do I shoot? Do I pass? Whatever. And then you make it 2-on-2, and then you just build that up basically to 3-on-3, 4-on-4 situations. So that again, like when you call a certain play or we're playing through a certain concept in the game, they're like, I've seen this multiple times. I know if they're in hedge, if they're in show, if they're in blitz, drop, whatever it is, I know what to do. And I think that's like the overarching philosophy is like making sure those guys are ready to go regardless of who we're playing. Like if we're playing, Carolina, we want to know what they do. We'll put that in our player development system within our practice. So they'll see it multiple times and get multiple hits on that. So when they, second half, winding down, 2 minutes left in the game, they're ready to go. That's the ultimate goal.
100%. And part of what's exciting for me with having you join our staff too is the fact we also have great coaches already on staff. And you think about Coach Dildy, Coach Carrawell, Coach J-Rob is young up-and-comer and learning this space. You've had a chance to meet them the last couple days. What's surprised you or what stood out to you about those guys?
Well, the first thing I noticed is like how welcoming they are. Just new guy coming in from, the NBA, like they've been open arms basically. They've all popped in the office, said hello. We've talked for a little bit. And they're each one of them in their own, itself are like they're really smart, and you can really tell they're really, really good at what they do. It's been fun. I think most of what I've done so far is just try to get to know them,
Right.
as people. And it's been great. The dinners and the lunches and the breakfasts that we've had, like, it's been good to see how they are as human beings. And they're the top of the line. Like, it's the best. Coach Carwell is hilarious. I can tell that you spoke to me about, like, speaking with him about, like, all of what Duke is. And I can already tell. I'm like, he's been here.
That's right.
He obviously played here. And he knows a lot about this place. He's going to be a huge resource with that.
Right.
We've shared a lot of stories with some of the people we know. I played against him when he was at Marquette. We won, but he won open gym the other day, so no big deal. But yeah, Coach Doty.
I didn't know that either. That's new for me too. Yeah.
Coach Wojo, he was there too. I hope he's listening.
Yeah.
But Coach Doty, same thing, like open arms. Him and his wife have been really good to my wife and I so far, which is awesome. Helping me with, going on the road next week, going recruiting. I have no clue what I'm even getting myself into, but he came and sat with me, kind of explained to me the day-to-day. So that helps. I'm sure I'm going to have a ton of questions for him, for everybody pretty much. But J-Rob too, taking me around, helped me out with just similar, like the Duke stuff. He's been here. He was explaining to me the school aspect of it yesterday, which has been great. And they're easy to get along with. And again, like great people.
We got a great group. So excited to get started with our new team as we finish things off. Well, we're going to have a great group this year. Can't wait to get started and for you to see our entire group and staff. And that's officially welcome, Coach Evan Brads. All right.
Yep, thank you for having me.
All right, man.